Welcome to You, Me, Empathy, a safe place for leading with your heart. Hey, thanks for being here. You, Me, Empathy is the official podcast of the Feely Human Collective, a collaborative mental health community designed to empower each of us to grow our capacity for empathy, vulnerability, and emotional wayfinding. Just a friendly reminder that this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only and is not a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. No one is just a silly boy with a feely heart. You can support the show by leaving a review in Apple Podcasts, following us on social media at Yumi Empathy and Feely Human, and joining the Feely Human Collective community at feelyhuman.co. And now your host, Known Wells.
Hello, Feely Humans. Welcome to another episode of Yumi Empathy. My name is Known Wells. I'm the creator and host of Yumi Empathy, and this is episode 142 on music that makes us feel seen and less alone with Joshua LeBreton. Joshua is a musician, a very talented one, and actually, you'll hear in a moment a song of his. With his new project, his mental health and music project, The Canary Yellow. You'll hear that in just a moment before our chat. It's great. I hope you enjoy it all. And I hope you enjoy this episode. We talk a lot about looking at our feelings objectively. Josh shares and opens up about his disruptive childhood and the abandonment struggles that had caused that. Retreating into ourselves, building authentic communities, and again, how music can make us feel seen and less alone. There is a track from The Sunset Tree, the album by the Mountain Goats, called This Year, which is a song that I've written about, actually. That album came out in 2005, and I'm a huge fan of the Mountain Goats as a whole. And was before that, but that album really deals with his relationship with his father and childhood abuse and things like that. And that song is so, still to this day, just gives me goosebumps and makes me feel all the feels and definitely makes me feel seen and less alone. If you haven't listened to This Year by the Mountain Goats, pause this and go listen to that. It's wonderful. Before we get to the episode, I wanted to remind you that you can write for the journal. You can do art collaborations with Feely Human. You can even lead a workshop for Feely Human. That's all at feelyhuman.co, feelyhuman.co. The Feely Human Collective is what it's called, and this podcast is part of the Feely Human Collective. It's actually the official podcast of the Feely Human Collective. So go check that out. We just launched in the shop Empathy for Kids zine by artist Chloe Owen, who's very talented. The zine is about 6-7 pages total, and on each page teaches kids a different way to think about empathy and how it applies to their life. It also has little pop-out, sort of playful, tactile elements to it. It's very sweet, very adorable. If you're a parent, or if you have friends who are parents, please consider supporting artist Chloe Owen and the Feely Human Collective by purchasing an Empathy for Kids zine. If you go to feelyhuman.co/shop, feelyhuman.co/shop, you can scroll down and see that there. It's wonderful. It's only $8. We only made 30 of them. We can make more, but there's a limited time only right now. So make sure to grab one. They're lovely. They're wonderful. Buy one for yourself. Buy one for a friend. It'd be a great, Christmas gift even. So buy them now. Get ahead. All right. What else do I want to say? I want to say that you're going to love this episode. Thank you for being a part of the Yumi Empathy community, and thanks for all the lovely, responses and feedback to my recent, more sort of personal, vulnerable videos I've been sharing on the Yumi Empathy Instagram at Yumi Empathy. It's making me think about, maybe I'll do a YouTube show at some point. I don't know. Who knows? But I appreciate that. I appreciate you making me feel a little less alone in my feelings. Yeah, still going to EMDR. Still having some weird physical stuff. I'll probably make an update soon. But I appreciate you all kind of hanging in there and sharing your thoughts and feelings. It really makes me feel seen. Just as this episode is all about making us feel seen and less alone. And music can do that. And Joshua LeBreton, my guest today, recognizes that and has recognized that as a musician who's been at it for over 18 years. He makes wonderful music, and his new project, The Canary Yellow, he's at The Canary Yellow on Instagram. Check it out. He's wonderful. I really enjoyed this chat. I think you will do too. Please enjoy episode 142, music that makes us feel seen and less alone, with Joshua LeBreton, and enjoy this song by Joshua.
Voices follow me and they say you're not good enough. You'll never be good enough. You should just give up. Listen, they lurk in the dark, and they prey upon your joy. They can't get enough till you're sleeping on your worth. Voices follow me and they say you're not good enough. You'll never be good enough. You should just give up. Listen, voices follow me and they say you're not good enough. You'll never be good enough. You should just give up. But who am I if I listen? Where did this all begin? If I fall in line when they hurt me, won't it just happen again? Still these voices follow me and they say you're not good enough. You'll never be good enough. You should just give up. Listen, voices follow me and they say you're not good enough. You'll never be good enough. You should just give up. Listen, voices follow me and they say you're not good enough. You'll never be good enough. You're not good enough. You should just give up. Listen.
Welcome to You, Me, Empathy, the official podcast of the Feely Human Collective. On this show, we explore the struggles, the triumphs, the brights, and the darks as we face, as humans, trying to get by on this wondrous and overwhelming pale blue dot. The intent of You, Me, Empathy is to talk openly, without judgment, about our mental health, our neuroses, our shared anxieties and worries, to create a dialogue that is vulnerable and deeply human and empathetic, and to share that dialogue with others to inspire emotional and cognitive collaboration and insight, so we can, hand in hand, break down the stigma that make us feel shame and guilt for struggling, for feeling our feelings, for being feely humans. You, Me, Empathy is a safe, friendly space designed to inspire the beauty in each of us. Today, I'm in a state of melodic joy because I'm here with singer-songwriter, navigator of darkness, and owner of The Canary Yellow, Joshua LeBreton. Hello, Joshua.
Hey, Noan, how you doing, man?
I'm doing okay. So happy to have you. Did I get your last name correct?
It's a tough one. So technically it's LeBreton, but it's
LeBreton. Okay.
right. It's been mispronounced, so much throughout my life. It's not really the biggest deal to nail it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel you on that. I have an odd first name, and I also have an odd last name. It's not mispronounced, but it's always misspelled. My last name is Wells with one L.
Okay,
and I'll
right.
tell people, I'm telling them my name, and I say Wells, WELS, Wells with one L. I'll even say all of that, and they still, I mean, their just brain just goes to two L's because they don't
Right.
see the single L often.
Yeah, that's a tough one for sure.
Yeah. So say it again for me.
So
LeBreton.
it's LeBreton. You got it exactly. It has like French, origins. So I guess you could say like Le Breton. But I don't really I'm not super in touch with that, part of my, heritage. So, my family typically pronounces it Le Breton.
LeBreton. Gotcha. Joshua. I said Joshua. I combined Gosh and Joshua. Look at
that's
me.
okay too. That's all right too.
Portmanteau over here. Well, I'm so happy to have you. Let's get into it. We always start the show with an emotional check-in. How are you feeling right now? How has your week been?
Sure. Week's been good. We're in the middle of the week, so it's a Wednesday, and everything's pretty low key. I guess as comfortable as it can be during a worldwide pandemic and kind of turmoil throughout the most of our country. So it's it could be better, but it could be a lot worse. And today's a good day. How about you?
I'm doing okay. Yeah, it's that's a good, I think, healthy perspective you have. It's ups and downs. Could be worse. Could always be worse, I guess people
Right.
say. Yeah, I'm doing okay. I think for me, where my brain is at lately, I mean, I was clear with you. I wasn't feeling well over the weekend, and
Right.
I had this weird like brain fog, and I don't know if it's related to some of the sort of other physical things that I've been trying to figure out with my doctor, or just exhaustion or something, but it was a weird like, and I don't know if it's just I'm getting older or what, but like my brain lately has just been feeling real foggy, and I've been like slurring words at times. I said Joshua just a moment ago. I've been like doing things like that, forgetting words, and I am thoroughly convinced I have the early signs of MS.
Oh, no.
That may be insensitive to people who have MS, but I don't intend that to be. I just like my anxiety brain is going a mile a minute, thinking about what all of these symptoms could be.
Sure. Yeah.
That's where my head's at.
I hear you. Well, I hope that either resolves or, you get some answers for that soon.
Thank you. My sort of physical journey has been marked by a lot of just weirdness and no answers. And so I can take that as a frustrating sort of reality of modern Western medicine.
Right.
Or I can also, maybe I can also say, okay, maybe this is just a microcosm of how we exist as humans in the world. And by that, I mean, there's so much in the world, certainly in science and medicine,
Sure.
that's a mystery that we'll never understand. And the reality is, in our struggles, we feel like we're deeply alone, right? Often. But the reality is, like, so many other people are struggling in the specific things that I'm probably struggling with, physically. And I need to remind myself of that. I need to remind myself that just because certain statistics say that, like, oh, these things may lead to heart failure, doesn't mean my heart's going to fail. It just means sometimes that happens.
Very true.
Yeah,
it's one of those things, like you said, we only are where we are in terms of medicine and really just understanding the human body. And, 100 years ago, we were further back, and 100 years from now, we will be further forward. And it's it's almost like you have to kind of accept where we are in the state of humanity.
Yeah, absolutely. How have you developed that mindset for yourself? And I guess what I mean by that is in the context of your health, your mental health. Like, how have you come to terms with the reality that sometimes it's going to be shitty, sometimes you're not going to have answers, sometimes it's just going to be a sort of a mindful process of like accepting what is?
Right. That's a really interesting question because although I do have footing in that, it's a tough one to really be sure about. But I'm 32 today, and when I was in my teenage years, I had a lot of kind of instability and ups and downs in terms of some emotional abuse from authority figures and also some physical abuse there. And because of that, I learned at a very young age to become pretty self-aware and not only self-aware, but very self-conscious and aware of, other people's feelings and thoughts and their states of mind. And, I think because of that, over the years, it's now that I'm in my own as an adult, it's kind of evolved to almost become more of a positive thing. Whereas in the past, I may have been, too self-conscious, maybe too aware of myself. So I'm worried about what other people might be, how they may be perceiving me in that moment. I think that those mindsets have evolved to be just a little bit more aware of the temporary state of things and knowing that there's only so many things I can control. So I've tried to get to a place where I accept the things that I cannot and pursue the things that I can. So that way I'm not burdened day to day with, constant anxiety from those types of unanswerable questions,
Yeah, no, that's well said. It's such a crucial, I think, foundational element of mental health, which is accepting. It's a lot of self-acceptance. It's a lot of like exploring who we are and how we relate to the world and what we can and can't control. I tend to sort of like to look at the world through the lens of like everything is chaos and chaos reigns, and sometimes that can be a little maybe kind of a cavalier interpretation of what's really going on, but that sometimes helps me because I tend to sort of dip into the anxiety brain, like you're talking about, like, letting it sort of overtake you, when the reality is like we're just kind of trying to over control a thing that shouldn't be necessarily controlled.
For me personally, I have a solid dose of, obsessive compulsiveness, and I've lived with that for a long time. And a lot of that comes from, maybe some family history with some, maybe some chemical, relations to that. Or I feel like a lot of it has to do with the trauma that I experienced when I was younger. And so I've lived with that really and been aware of that for probably the better part of maybe almost 10 years now. And because of that, I've kind of, learned and adopted many techniques to help me stay away from the kind of the spiral downward where it's like I'm concerned with things and I feel like they have to be dealt with right then. I've learned, different techniques like things like postponement, where you can take whatever you're thinking, and instead of saying to yourself, "Don't think about this," you can compromise with yourself and say, "I'll think about this at a later time," whether it's in a couple of hours or whether it's in maybe the next day. It's almost like you learn to prioritize your first things that should be first. I always use the example of, if there's a burning building, people need to get out of that building. That's something that needs to happen right then. There's no time to compromise with that or postpone that. But some thoughts can be, and I've learned those techniques, and they've helped me get a little bit better grip on my day-to-day realities. So because I'm with you, I tend to let, maybe, I won't say negativity because that's not maybe the right word, but maybe too much realism or too much concern with the the things about the world that are not great in the particular moment that you're in, things like postponement have helped me to kind of get back to the present and focus on what I can do something about right then, and that's been really helpful for me.
Yeah. No, I haven't really heard of that term and spoken about it in that way. I think I'm aware generally of that concept, and it makes
Sure.
sense. It makes complete sense. It's allowing us to really kind of sit in those feelings a bit and be patient with them and not
Exactly.
be so reactionary,
Yeah, I think patience is kind of the key because, with things like your emotional state, it's although it's a great thing to be in tune with, in the same light, it can get the best of you. And, so it's, I think, important to be able to kind of step back, almost sometimes out of yourself and look at it as objectively as you can. So that way, whatever you do subjectively can be, that much better. You can kind of, as you mentioned, be patient with it and move forward in a way that'll benefit you and those around you, as opposed to kind of almost stopping your progress even for that 1 minute.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier the sort of early childhood experiences and how those experiences sort of helped you early on develop some self-awareness and, sensitivities to kind of what was going on emotionally
Right.
in your life. Can you talk about some of those early experiences?
Sure. So my story kind of starts with I've actually never met my biological father. I didn't know that until later in life. But when I found that out and I kind of looked back on my history, it really kind of almost showed me that I was kind of always marked by the, kind of the stain of abandonment really from, the day I was born. And throughout my childhood and into my adolescence, my mother, who met my adopted father when I was very young, they were married. There were many divorces between then and all the way through into my early adult years. Both my adopted father and my mother have each separately been divorced a handful of times. Over one and below six, but in that range. And because
To
of
each
that,
other or to different people?
To different people, exactly.
Gotcha.
So they were together, they divorced, they found new spouses, and they were divorced
Got it.
a handful of times beyond that. I'm the oldest of four siblings, so it's there was always this kind of instability there because of that, those changing of hands. And I dealt with a lot of step parents along the way, and some of those step parents were not happy times, and I learned, pretty early on what it looked like for people to lose control and to not have a great grip on reality, and what it looks like when they lash out to others because of that. And a lot of that was directed at me. And because I was, always a smart kid, I tend to recognize that very quickly, and be aware of what was happening, almost like an adult would be aware of it as opposed to a young child. So as I'm getting into my adolescence and all of this time, I'm moving around quite a bit. I actually went to 8 different schools growing up, all through grade school. So I'm also kind of robbed of the idea of creating relationships with people because, I'll start at a new school and, have to recultivate relationships, try to find new friends. And then I would maybe leave that school very soon after, maybe a year, maybe 2 years. And, that happened all from really age 7 or so to about age 16. And so all of the time where you would learn to develop, healthy relationships and what those things look like. So with all of those ups and downs happening, I just would always have to retreat inside of myself. It's like that was my place of solitude and, oftentimes despair. But it was the only thing that I had that was permanent. And coupled with that was the gift of music, and listening to music and having that companionship and learning about my struggles through the insights of music artists was, such a unique experience for me. It developed a lot of loyalty toward music, and also this kind of self-awareness that allowed me to see beyond myself as well as deep inside of myself as I was struggling with these, these unfortunate events.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, it sounds very disruptive, right?
Right.
And I can't imagine going to that many schools, all of those divorces. I certainly relate to the kind of the divorce piece of it. My parents having married and then divorced and then married each other again and then divorced again,
Oh, wow.
and many separations in between.
Right.
So as the oldest, what was your relationship like with your mother?
It's a really great question. It started out really great. We were very close. And right around the time when the first divorce happened between her and my adopted father, there were more, boyfriends and then as well as spouses starting to kind of permeate now into my life and throughout my life. And we're really starting to move around a lot. And, my mom was young. She, I believe she was 20 or maybe 21 when she had me. And, I was born in 1988. So this is kind of the tail end of the 80s heading into the 90s, and a little bit different of a time than it was now. And, it was, we were very close. And as time went on, because of the interaction with these different spouses and these different authority figures that started to come into my life, it changed. And unfortunately, it didn't stay healthy for all of that time, especially as I got into my teenage years. And, one of the biggest things I think that shook me the most, and I haven't spoken about this as much, but was when I was 16 years old. My mother was married to my stepfather, and that was where a lot of the, emotional kind of turmoil and ups and downs were really kind of happening. I'm kind of coming of age. I'm the oldest of four. I'm learning how to be, trying to learn how to be independent and assert myself. And for whatever reason, that tends to be even, I think, more of an issue for the, the male species because of just the hormones that exist inside of us at that time. And, so there was a lot of headbutting going on. And I actually went to my adopted father's house, which was in a different city. We had moved cities at this point. And I went down with my sister, that's my adopted father's biological daughter. So that's my half sister. And, we're going there, and it's around Christmas time. And so we're going for a holiday. My sister's about 12 and I'm 16. And I actually found out while I was there that I wasn't going to be coming back. So my sister would be coming back. They will be, my mother and stepfather would be coming to retrieve her. But I would not be coming back. So I was, essentially kicked out of my house in that way, but I had no preparation for that. I had
Why?
no.
Did they give you a reason why?
No, to be totally honest, there was none of that. There was never a real explanation for that. There was obvious turmoil in the house, obvious problems in the broken home that we kind of had. But I didn't realize that I was going to be kind of pushed out of that picture. And, during that time when I was forced to, and so you have to understand that I'm 16 and this is Christmas time, which means it's, November, December. It's December. And
you're a minor at this point.
I'm a minor, right? So I'm very young. I'm right in the middle of your teenage years. I was in my junior year of high school. I have friends at this point. I have a musical person, so I'm playing music with others as well. Have these very tight bonds with people. I have a significant other, a girlfriend at the time, and I found out that I was not going to be coming back. So we're 3.5, 4 hours away from this city that I'm no longer going to be going back to. My cell phone was taken away. I didn't have access to my cell phone. And as much as it sounds heavy, it was extremely, extremely tough for me. I right then, is when I think I realized that the relationship with my mother had changed. I felt very abandoned. I felt very betrayed in that way. And
did you talk to her about it?
My mom was also in a lot of heaviness because of my stepfather at the time, and
who was abusive,
who was cultivating a lot of this, as I keep mentioning, the ups and downs, and the just the not so great things that come with someone who is not entirely stable day to day, and I don't make excuses for her, because I'm 32 now with a wife and daughter. My wife and I just made 8 years in July, and my daughter makes 1 year old in just a couple of weeks. So because of that, I have a very specific mindset on raising a family and what that means for me. So I don't make excuses for her decisions. But I certainly can see the pressure that she was under to make the rash decisions that she did. Unfortunately, I got the brunt of that. I was maybe kind of sacrificed in that way, because who knows what a 16-year-old would do in that situation. I contemplated suicide multiple times. Never attempted. I'm glad for that. Because I had music, I stayed pretty far away from substance abuse, and all of those things just happened to be my path. But as you and many people know, it's not always like that. And, it was very difficult. So the relationship at that point was no longer something that I felt very strongly about, and, it's like my entire life I was not able to commit to relationships in terms of friends because of the moving. And, I have these kind of rotating spouses between, both my mother and my adopted father. And, it's just, that was almost like the nail in the coffin of just not really fully having a healthy mindset on cultivating relationships. And I just retreated further into myself, further in, and it was tough. It was a tough time.
So when you're told this at 16, like, where are you back living with your mom, or where do you live then?
So at 16, I am with my stepfather and my mother in North Louisiana, which is, of course, as I mentioned earlier to you, I'm from Louisiana. So we're in North Louisiana there, and my adopted father is in South Louisiana. And so I'm living with my mother and stepfather and my siblings, my 3 siblings there. And my adopted father is still where he always lived with his new wife. They had been married for a handful of years at this point, and same thing with my stepfather and my mother. And so it was going to this, this kind of, to my adopted fathers for this family, kind of Christmas break, that I'm realizing that, and I also won't be coming back. I was told this from my dad, actually in the parking lot of the location where they exchanged legal papers in order to sign me over to my adopted father, because of course, as you pointed out earlier, I was a minor. So it really was a blindsided kind of thing, and it really broke me in terms of my ability to trust people, and just all of the things that come along with those feelings.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I thank you for sharing that. And I really relate to a lot of that. Me as someone who, as a teenager, from 12, 13 on, did a lot of like going back in, I'm going to protect myself emotionally. And for me, a lot about, and I wonder how it was for you. You talk about sort of like going inward. For me, it was a lot of like protection, but not a lot of just like introspection. It was a lot of like shutting down emotionally. So I wasn't continued to be hurt. Right.
Right.
But it wasn't a lot of like introspection. The way you describe it, and maybe this is just retrospective sort of change and edits, is like you were a bit more sort of mindful of what was going on internally and how that interacted with the, maybe disruptive, not so healthy environment that you were living in.
I can explain why it felt like that for me. In the broken state of the household that I was in when I was, like, as I mentioned, in North Louisiana with my mother and stepfather in this teenage kind of area before I'm, forced to move down. The reason why my internal kind of, diving into myself became so, introspective and kind of focused in on my reality as opposed to just a protection measure is because, unfortunately, and I share this, not reluctantly, that's not the right word, but in a way that, it's tough to look back on this, but when I would retreat into myself or maybe leave that household to go to others or reach out to others in order to address concerns that I was having about the household that I was in, I was always either heard, and so I was cut off from those people who were hearing me, or not taken seriously enough, and so not able to confront those issues with somebody who could help. So because of that, I would retreat, I would go inside, and because it wasn't looked on, I was often antagonized for that. So as I would maybe go into my room or to try to get away from, whatever was causing me these frustrations or causing me this struggle, I was many times followed and mocked. So because of that, I had to, when I had my alone time, I had to consider to myself, what exactly is happening and why, and what does it have to do with me, and what doesn't it have to do with me? And of course, I have the language for this now. I'm 32. I didn't have the language for that as a 15, 16-year-old. But because I was starting to focus on those things, and because I had, and I keep bringing it up because it's so important, because I had music, and I wasn't, the music I was listening to was not, it wasn't, music that you can dance to, or music that you might cut loose to, or just kind of listen to in the background. It was very, very, depth of filled music. And because of that, it's like I was, when I would retreat into myself, I would use that as sort of my, my barrier. And because of that, I was learning how to navigate these tough emotions as opposed to just lashing out or just pulling inward. And all during this time, I'm starting to pick up music as a craft. I'm very interested in music, and I'm starting to learn about songwriting, and I'm starting to participate in that because I'm listening to these music artists do this, and and they are helping me in such this way that I say, well, if they can get relief from this, then surely I can get relief from this too. And I just started doing that. I just started participating in that as well. And that was therapy too, and I was being very vulnerable about stuff that I didn't really have the language for then. And, you know, being a songwriter now for, I think it's been 18 years, it's like, I look back on that and just, that was the beginning of focusing in on what makes me tick and what makes people tick around me that I really can't do anything about. And, it wasn't always as measured as it sounds today, of course. In fact, it wasn't at all in many times, but it was my entry into that, and entry into how do I get out of this in one piece,
Yeah, I do know, and that makes perfect sense. You're finding a. It's like you're finding a. It's a safe space. Like, we need safe spaces to heal and to sort of ponder this stuff and to feel our feelings, right?
Right.
And you found that in music. You found that in the stories of music. You found that in just the rhythm of music and how you can sort of connect on an emotional level to music. I think that's beautiful, and I had a similar thing with reading early on, and stories and sort of fantasy stories, and sort of escaping. For me, I think of it as an escape, because I would intentionally go to these sort of magical sort of wonderlands that were so in such stark reality to the darkness that I felt that was around me and sort of encroaching on my space, and so I had stories, I had fantasy novels, and you had music, you had the tunes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's exactly right. Music is such an often used kind of, product or measure. Everyone listens to music in some capacity, whether you're in an elevator and, going to a certain floor, or you're, at an event and there's just a little bit of music in the background, or you're watching a movie, or you're, really deeply into it, like myself. There's really, it's so a part of human culture that I think that people, both underappreciate and fully appreciate it for what it is. And I say that to say that, music is a series of moments, because so you mentioned reading books, which I was actually an avid reader when I was younger, when I was before my teenage years. And I know what it's like to dive into that world. And music was that for me, because, I may not have had very long to retreat into myself. And 3 to 5 minutes that a song can take, 3 to 5 minutes that a songwriter can dive into things that make me feel less alone, that make me feel more seen, that make me feel more human and more connected to other people that unfortunately I cannot see. So I can get a glimpse of that existence. There was, and of course, coupled with the sonic complexity that music is and what it can do, almost like a great plate of food can do. Just the right taste coupled together with the right health benefits can really just, make for a great day, make for a great life or a great moment. And I look at music that way. And sometimes in those 3 to 4 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes, whatever it might be, I found so much magic in those moments that it made me feel so many things at once. And the most important thing is it just made me feel not alone. And, I, in a time where I felt very alone, in a time where I would reach out to others and not have the satisfaction of that companionship, because, it might be that avenue might be cut from me, or as I mentioned, I might get, shipped to another city. Music was the only thing that was permanent, and it was like that for a very long time. And I took that into adulthood, and I I have a very strong respect, reverence, and appreciation for music. And I, frankly, to be completely honest, am disgusted when it is exploited for reasons that are not great. And it's a highly exploited art, one of the most exploited arts, in fact. And
How do you mean? How do you mean by that?
well, if you look at like I always think of like a painter or somebody who does visual art. I feel like everything has opportunity to be exploited. So of course things can be taken advantage of in different, factors of life. And I'm sure all art has its issues. But I find with music, especially in pop culture, oftentimes music is almost used as this vehicle for like self-perpetuation. It's like you're trying to get people to really focus on you in a way that elevates you or puts you on a pedestal above others. And, if you think of like many pop stars and, just the idea of celebrity culture and music is highly entrenched in that. I see that so much. It's like I see music artists who are promoting themselves more than they're promoting their art, and not their story, not their person, but their ability to make you feel less than so they can be elevated almost in like an idolatry type of, way.
Mm-hmm.
And I have such strong convictions against that because the music artists that I was listening to, they didn't give me those feelings. They didn't give me those ideas. They made me feel like they were exploring the depths of the parts that made them human and allowed me to connect to them in a way that helped me to, feel human myself. And so because of that, I have just a strong conviction on, letting music be what it is, not using it to further to your agenda for yourself,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Music and mental health, like in our struggles, right? We need mirrors. In addition to feeling safe, we need I'll just call them mirrors or tools. We need something, whether it's music, whether it's other people, communities, friends. We need people to reflect back our own feelings, and they do that through authenticity, through real human emotional sharing and vulnerability and struggle,
Right.
and these types of things. And when, on a human level, on a gut level, when you come across art or whatever it may be that feels not quite that, it doesn't sit well. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It because I have such a loyalty to what music was for me and a loyalty to what it did for me. I try to use that conviction to help me not lose sight of my reasons for doing it today and my purposes for that, because I know that there are people out there who need music the way I needed music. And because music was there for me in that way, I want to make sure that I remember that and give back not only to it as a craft, but to make sure that, as you mentioned with a mirror, that I'm able to hold up my own mirrors with the skills and the craftings that I have as a person. Because the truth is that, my interest as a music artist is not to find an audience of thousands and thousands of people who want to fawn over what I do as a musician, because that's not been something that music has been for me. I've never been interested in the idea of impressing upon others my worth in kind of this persuasive way. My music was always this place of safety. It was always this place of solitude. And so I feel such a commitment and such a responsibility to, if I was just that one person and didn't have some of those artist insights, I don't know where I would be today. And I don't even truly know if I would be here today, because who knows if some of those moments weren't there, if I would have been able to attach it to anything else. So because of that, my responsibility toward music, I feel, is just greater than maybe the average person's thought process on music. And that's okay, of course. Whatever music is for you is great. I have no qualms with that or anything. But for me, I want to make sure that I give back to it in the way that it gave to me, just in case there is somebody else out there who needs that mirror.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's a beautiful gift that you can offer. I wonder for you, Joshua, as an artist and as an artist who wants to respect the art form of music and honor your roots in it and honor this beautiful healing mirroring process that we can with music, like how do you balance that piece with your goals, your career goals, what are your aspirations in music as an artist? Like,
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
there has to be a part of you that because I'll put this on me. So I feel the same way about this podcast, right?
Sure.
I do this for myself, certainly. Like I started it because I wanted safe spaces and I wanted safe spaces for others. And I try not to think about numbers and things like that. And I think that's when I do obsess over those things, which is not often, to be clear. I realize that's the ego, and I need to step back and understand that this isn't about me, that this is about community. This is about us coming together and healing together. And that has been a great sort of driving force for me. But at the same time, I do want to grow the community, because growing the community, bringing more people in it, getting numbers up, right, is more people engaging in their hearts, more people thinking about empathy. And that is the end game. So it's like this honoring of authenticity and why I'm doing it in the first place, but also the true desire to grow and to continue leveling up in a way,
Right. Well, I think, to answer your question, is really very simple, because everything you just said states the hand in hand of natural, authentic growth. Because there are a couple of thoughts I have on that. And the first thought is that, so as an artist, I have to think back on the many artists who were never discovered, the many artists who we've never heard from, or maybe have not heard from in a large capacity. If they were to compromise themselves in order to be seen, then they wouldn't really do anything for anybody in an authentic way. So really, your audience should be whoever your audience is. It might be one person, it might be 1.5 million people, but I think the purpose is to find your audience. So as you mentioned, it's not that you want your podcast to grow to become lucrative in numbers. It's that you want more people who need the things that you offer to find you. You want to help the people and build the community of people who can help each other in an authentic and natural and really a non-capitalistic way. I think where we have fallen prey to, especially in definitely the world, but especially in the US, is the idea of capitalism and having to monetize or, exponentially grow everything that you do, when in reality, if it should grow, then it should. But if you ever take a path that makes it grow for the wrong reasons, then you're never going to fulfill any part of your audience. So I feel like for me with music, my goals are to reach people that need to be reached by what I have to offer. And my goals are to cultivate that in such a way that I have something worth offering. Because if I don't have anything to offer, well, then I won't reach people. But if I have something to offer and I'm not trying to reach people, well, then I've got, nobody reached. So I think there's this delicate balance of figuring out what exactly do I have to offer as a human being? What exactly do I have to offer as an artist or a podcaster or whoever, whatever it is that you might be doing, and what is the need of others to find that thing? And I think that is the most natural way to grow, and just to know that it's better to have. I learned this in my mid-20s because I'm a musician by trade. So this particular project, the Canary Yellow, which is this music artist project I'm involved in now, my songwriting project is a passion project. So I have no financial expectations with this. In fact, with the music industry the way it is, I don't think many people have financial expectations in general. But point being is, in my mid-20s, I did some larger kind of, accolade kind of, perspective stuff with music where I was, playing for artists, opening for very large artists, playing for crowds and crowds of people. And I hated it. I never felt fulfilled. I was doing the thing that I thought equaled success for a musician and what people told me success looked like. And I hated it. And so what I learned in those moments was, why am I doing this thing why am I doing the one thing that I've never even fully agreed with? Why am I not pouring myself into the things about music that I know I do agree with, like helping other people? Or today, for example, I'm also a music teacher, so I get to kind of pour that into, young people who are interested in music, and, that's also fulfilling as well. So I think there's just a line with saying, what are my goals? What do people need? And what are the avenues of supplying that to them in a way that is actually going to help them? And I feel like if I lock that in, if you lock that in, if we lock that in, we stop thinking about the billionaire culture. We stop trying to say, what can I do to make the next dollar? What can I do to get the next follower? And we say, what does this follower need from me? Because they must be here for something. What can I do for them right now? And I think that is the most authentic, authentic and natural and honest way of gaining new people who might be interested in what you do, because the people who are benefiting from you want to share that with others based on their personal experience. So nobody is going around proving things or saying you should do this. It's just a natural progression. It's like a mosquito to one of those kind of light things, it's just, it just naturally happens. So I think that's the goal. Now, audience sizes vary, but I certainly did not get fulfillment out of playing for thousands of them for the wrong reasons. So that's what I try to hold to today with this particular music artist project.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear you, and I think it's admirable, and I understand wholly. I do, and I do think, I will say a piece of it, and you're clearly on the right track, is to live in that space authentically and just allow your art to be what it means to you most meaningfully, right?
Right.
You do need to have this foundation of self-acceptance, right? And self-knowing and really doing that work. Because as you pointed out, American culture is deeply capitalistic in many really destructive ways, morally, emotionally, societally, all these things. Right. The sort of pull, we see so many examples of people who are, quote unquote, successful in their craft. And it's hard not to be drawn right to that, right, at times. So to really hold to our truths and to honor our truths, we need to understand what that truth is.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. The thing that allowed me to get there the quickest is when my daughter was born, is when it really started. And while my wife was pregnant with my daughter is when I was starting to get inklings of that.
Hmm.
My childhood was such a, kind of up and down journey. And I have so much perspective on what is not healthy that I don't want those things for my family. And because of that, when my daughter was born, it was almost like everything that I'm discussing today just crashed down on me in a way that there was no more uncertainty, because I realized that my daughter is my most important audience in everything that I do, because
Hmm.
she is the person that I can influence the most, more than anything I would ever do musically, more than anything I would ever do really at all, because from the second she's born, she's looking to me for so many things. There are so many things that they're picking up, and it's like the ultimate responsibility, because you are cultivating the next generation. You're cultivating the future of the planet. And when I had that realization, it's like everything that I've ever believed in just came to a head, and I said, I don't ever want to do anything that I don't feel highly, highly good about again. I don't want to, um, I don't want to have any of the negative aspirations that can come along with really just a little bit of minor narcissism, and as you mentioned, just looking at what success is and or what it is painted to be. I realized with my daughter that I need to paint that differently, because I don't want her to grow up searching for all of the kind of loose ends that, one, I didn't have fulfilled as a child and as a young adult, and two, chasing after the pursuits that won't ultimately bring her to a place of fulfillment. And so the best way to do that is not to tell her what to do. The best way to do that is to raise her up in a way that exemplifies that, and to show her that, Dad, why do you do this? What is it? What is it that makes you want to do this? In all of these years that she's under my wing, I need to show that to her, eventually give her language for that. So when she starts to see those things in the world for herself, she has a better leg up on that. And hopefully in the future, our podcast and our art are less about the downsides and the kind of low states of our mental well-being and our mental health, but maybe the ways that we've found to deal with it in such a positive way that we have less of that in our culture. We have less of those negative side effects of that. We have, less, abusive households, less broken households, and more people who are willing to look inward so they don't affect someone outwardly in a negative fashion. And all of those things really solidified with her, because I realized that she is my most important opportunity to bring that to the world. And it slowly trickled into every aspect of my life. And everything that I do now, I try to look at in that way. Of course, I'm not perfect. And this is not me saying that every day I wake up and do an incredible job at this, but I try to wake up and look at life through that lens. And when I do, I find myself making better decisions. And when I make better decisions, I find myself a happier person. And it makes me realize that if I have to be on this planet for, upwards of 80 years, I need to find out how to navigate this in a healthy way, because 32 is pretty young in the scheme of that, assuming I'm lucky enough to get up there. So I'm trying to retailor my views on, or let's say, specify my motivations in order to retailor my methods for life. And that's really where I'm at with as much as I can be today. And my daughter was a big catalyst to that. Just a great realization for that.
I love that. And it gives me such hope, for humanity, to know that you and your wife are cultivating that love and that empathy and that beauty in your own family. Because I like to think of it as one person at a time, right? That
Absolutely.
in our friendships, or one listener to this podcast, or one listener of your music, or one child we raise, and then the ripple effect of that, if we do it right, can be exponential. So that's such a beautiful thing to hear. I'm
I
curious,
agree. It's very
Joshua,
important.
the early music you were listening to when you first started getting into it, what were those artists? What were those albums?
Man, so I'm going to share a couple of them because it's worth hearing. I have to kind of preface it with saying that I have very little, I guess, identification with some of this stuff today. But it was at a time that I needed it, and I like to really go back to the very beginning, and some of the just the albums that were in my mom's collection, like starting all the way back with something as trivial as an NSYNC single when I was young and didn't have access to music. And I was just like, wow, music is great. This is, I would play it on her stereo and, call into radio stations and request it to be played. And, so it started there, and it's funny to think about, but it's like, I have to remember that it has to start somewhere. And it progressed to, other more maybe angsty kind of art forms. Like I was a big fan of the rapper Eminem at a certain point, and
Sure.
really at a time where he was exploring a lot of his, kind of early traumas, and I was just, relating to some of that angst and relating to some of that vulnerability, and it progressed to bands like early Good Charlotte, early Blink-182. Late in my teenage years, I was heavily influenced by like the emo movement. So I was listening to bands like The Used, a band called Finch. These are just kind of these early examples, and it just progressed and progressed. And, today I tend to favor, bands like Coldplay and Radiohead. And, I have a fascination with female songwriters like Regina Spektor and Fiona Apple, and it's just kind of come full circle and continues to evolve. But it was something for me at every point in my life, and there was just something there each time that I needed it. And so instead of laughing too hard about it and poking too much fun at saying these early artists that I might look back today and say, oh, I'm not interested in them today. But I think to myself, what if I didn't have them? What if I didn't have those records? And every single one of them, I retreated into myself with them. And it started small. It started kind of surface level, and it broadened and became deeper. And so that's just a few examples.
What's so interesting about that is, you starting with NSYNC, right? And
Right.
And one could argue that NSYNC is the type of band that we were talking about earlier, where they're maybe not doing the stuff that you're doing, right? It's a band created for a specific monetary sort of marketing purpose. I mean,
Sure.
I have nothing against NSYNC, and yet it served a pivotal role in your mental health, and I think that's fascinating.
It really is. Like that's why I like to be honest about that, because I can, I could go back through my catalog and name all of these, hipster bands and these things that make me sound cultured. But instead, I like to be as honest as possible with the things that broke me into it and allowed me to start to want to culture myself, and it's a funny thing to say, but it kind of started with, NSYNC, a single that
what was the
mom,
single?
It was called I Want You Back.
Oh, sure.
It was like one of the earliest ones I think they had really released. And, my mom actually had a couple of records by an artist called Seal, which I believe is a European artist. And to this day, there's a record that he put out that I just had access to that. And I listened to it today, and it's still so beautiful, and I just, I have to make sure I pay homage to that, and as I mentioned earlier, with that respect and that reverence, I really mean that, and yeah, those are just some examples of artists that were around and I had access to and I just latched onto.
Yeah. I love that. It makes me think about the stuff I was listening to when I was a teenager, and particularly like 12, 13, 14, like 1994 for like I'm 39, so I'm a bit older than you. 94 was a big year for me in terms of
Right.
how old was I? I was 13, 14, and Bad Religion
Right.
came out with an album. What's that album? I'm forgetting the album name, but it was an amazing album. Bad Religion. NoFX had Punk and Drublic that year.
Right.
Green Day put out Dookie that year.
Yeah, true.
And there was a couple of other just like, I think Anti-Flag like came out with an amazing album that year. Like it was just a great time for especially Southern California punk rock. And I just ate it up. Like as a kid who felt angsty myself, right? Like who felt like I need to get some of this frustration out, this anger out, this like not dealing with my depression out. Like those bands like really, and to this day, I enjoy listening to that stuff still.
Right.
It really helped me.
Yeah. I mean, it's I think sometimes, myself included, it's like, especially in conversation with others, it's like we want people to know that we're cultured. We want people to know the things that make us, I don't know, I guess, valuable in a way that doesn't connect us to things that we would look down on. But, I realize that
that's all meaningless.
It's all meaningless.
I mean, yeah.
What really is taste in anything? If you're being really honest with yourself, yeah, I know I have taste in music, specific taste, not good taste. I just meant specific taste. But it's like, if you view, it's just like I mentioned, kind of retreating into myself when I was younger and looking outward and saying, okay, this is not okay. And I'll figure this out one day. I have the same perspective as an adult, and I pull myself out and say, if I'm looking at us from space and just looking at our little planet, well, I mean, what really are some of these things that we hold on to so dearly? There are only a couple of things that really will stand the test of time, and a lot of it outside of that is meaningless, and it's just not worth attaching yourself to in such a way that you can't exist without those things. Even music. I love music. And as you can hear, I have many ties and deep emotional connection, probably more than most people, to music. However, music does not make me who I am, and because of that, I just take it as just one of those things. It's just one of those things that I fully appreciate. I fully enjoy, just like walking out. If we have a really nice day, I really particularly enjoy the fall. Fall time is coming up, and it's really the same. It's likened to that, just having an appreciation for a moment that is good is enough,
Yeah, well said. So Joshua, can you tell me and the listeners a little bit about your new project, the Canary Yellow, and what it means to you and what you want to do with it?
Yeah. So the Canary Yellow is essentially my songwriting kind of structure for pouring these ideas and these insights and these thoughts into in a way that I can kind of package it up and it be its thing, and I can open it up when I want to dive into it. And it's I am fortunate that I've gathered the skills to produce, mix, and kind of create all of my own music in-house. And so it's just kind of this mirror into who I am as a person and what I want to offer as an artist. And I've done many creative projects over the years, and this is the one that I wanted to have some permanency to moving into my adult life, into my 30s, and it be a place of refuge for not only myself, but anybody who needs that companionship, anybody who needs the things that I got from music in spades when I needed it. And it was just my effort to funnel everything that I'm interested in doing as an artist to other people, hopefully help them feel seen, feel less alone, and benefit from it in the way that I benefited from it music when I needed it.
It's beautiful. What a beautiful gift that is. Thank you for sharing that. Let's talk about empathy heroes, Joshua. We always kind of start to wrap up the show talking about the folks in our lives who are deeply empathetic. They could be people we know personally. They could even be characters from stories we love, or movies, or just, figures in history that are deeply compassionate, empathetic about the world. I will go first to give you a moment to think about your empathy hero.
Okay.
My empathy hero this week is Kim Erickson, who runs the company, The Canine Republic, which is thecaninerepublic.com. And I learned of her, Kim, through my wife, Jessica. Jessica and I are both dog lovers and recently adopted a rescue named Maddie. And Kim, along with Samantha at Pack Life LA, do a lot of dog training, and the dog training style is deeply human and dog connection. It's like it really speaks to the connection we have as creatures, and it also reminds you as a human interacting with creatures and dogs, horses, whatever, that you do have to be mindful of your body. You have to be mindful of where you are at emotionally and how that impacts the dog, right? And how that impacts the relationship with the dog, and how that impacts the energy with which you have that relationship and how that's forged.
Sure.
And it's such a beautiful example of, I think, the types of relationships we can have with other humans, being mindful of how our energy and how our mindfulness can contribute or take away from our relationships. And I just really love what Kim Erickson is doing at the Canine Republic. She will be a guest on this podcast soon. But meanwhile, listeners, check her out. She's awesome. She's just go to the website. It's thecaninerepublic.com. And that's my empathy hero. How about you?
Yeah, that's a really great motivation for sure. I mean, I think being in tune with yourself is, helpful in many different aspects of life. So that's great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Let's see. I guess another person that deeply influenced me, who's a writer and who's no longer with us. He's been gone for a long time. Is an author called C.S. Lewis, and I was always a big fan of his works. He did some of the pop culture references, like the Chronicles of Narnia. That's like some of his larger works, and
sure.
He's also done some maybe some lesser known things, and I always enjoyed his perspective on humanity. And I think when I was young, especially in my early adulthood, reading some of his works really helped me gain an insight for the value that we all have as human beings, and how really, if you take just a second to get the focus off of yourself and really try to look, for the good of others, at least on the same plane as your own, it really starts to transform you. And you mentioned the word level up earlier. I feel that way. It really deeply encompasses what empathy is, because empathy is really about letting your own personal kind of blinders not affect your ability to, appreciate those around you and make sure that you can really get on their level as well. He was always a great teacher in that way for me. And so I'll have to give it to that author.
Nice. Yeah, no, it's a great one. I know C.S. Lewis very well as someone who was raised in a Christian environment. I no longer, am connected to that religion or religion
Sure.
in general, but I do I do think of him as a great mind and thinker. I remember enjoying his sci-fi trilogy,
Right.
This Hideous Strength and others. Those were great.
Yeah, he was, like you said, he was a great thinker, good mind, and and highly empathetic, and I always appreciated that, especially when I was learning what that was.
Excellent. Yeah, that's a great one. Okay, well, Joshua, where can the Feely humans out there connect with you and learn more about the Canary Yellow and all of that loveliness?
Sure. Well, no, I'm so appreciative of you having me. Being grateful and trying to live a life of gratitude is very important for me. And I tried to be active about that. So I just want to make sure I thank you, just from the bottom of my heart for having me, for allowing me to connect with you and others, and for you doing this podcast, because it's just a great opportunity for people to connect. And, so that being on the table, thecanaryyellow.card, which is CARRD.co, is my website for everything centralized, all social media, all music. And I can be found on Facebook, Instagram at The Canary Yellow, on Twitter, YouTube, and especially the streaming services like Spotify and Apple Music. And, I would be thrilled if anybody was interested in following along, and highly appreciative of that.
Excellent. Well, listeners, all of those links will be in the show notes for this episode. Joshua, thank you so much for those kind words. I share the same. It was really exciting to connect. I'm really appreciative of what you do and how you've used your experiences and stories and poured them into these passions that you have, and wanting to really be mindful of that and that relationship with others and how others can heal through your art. It's a beautiful gift, and I'm grateful for that and grateful for you.
Absolutely. Well, again, thank you so much. And it was really great to be here today.
Likewise, my friend, and to you listeners, as I always say, I'm here, you're here, we're here together on this wayward, overwhelming, awe-inspiring pale blue dot. We have each other. It's you, me, empathy.